Okay, so Om Magana Timidandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, this of course is a very special initiation. The devotees who were taking initiation have come to Krishna consciousness, as far as I know, through the Hatha Yoga and the Ashtanga Yoga process. Isn't that true, Jayananda? Jayananda? You can hear me? Yes. So, yeah, so that's true. So, this is very, very, very nice, because people come to Krishna consciousness for a variety of reasons, for a variety of purposes. Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita understands this. He says, Chatur Vidha Bhajanti Mam. People come because they're inquisitive, because they're looking for wealth, they're looking for knowledge, or they're in distress. And so Krishna himself is very, very open insofar as how people come to the process of bhakti yoga. And actually all that Krishna wants is that people love him. Because that's ultimately his instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavamad bhakto mad yajimam namaskuru. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, etc., etc., etc. And in order to accomplish that, to have people from different walks of life, different cultures, different, let's say, academic pursuits come to Krishna, one has to understand Krishna consciousness from a non-ritualistic viewpoint, or from a transcultural viewpoint, to use a better word. Transculture means to transcend all sorts of external aspects, formalities, and even transcend institutional considerations. Actually, I was talking to Jayananda, or communicating with Jayananda before, about, and also Gokul Chandra, who are my very, very dear students, who I've known for at least 200 years. So anyway, so I've been communicating with them about how important it is for everyone to understand that Krishna consciousness is not based upon any particular set of cultural dynamics or institutional dynamics. You know, because institutional dynamics or cultural dynamics can impede the flow of bhakti. You know, that's really what we're interested in. Bhakti. So bhakti has nothing to do with what we look like. Bhakti has nothing to do with our hairstyle. Bhakti has nothing to do with our mode of work, except there's certain things you can't do in bhakti yoga, like you shouldn't be killing cows or anything like that, or selling marijuana, or being a prostitute. I mean, there's certain things that you really shouldn't do that are not productive to Krishna consciousness. But at the same time, it's transcultural. It's transcultural. And whatever reason one comes to bhakti, that's fantastic. As Krishna says, or as is said in the Bhagavatam, akama sarvakama mokshakama daradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. It doesn't really matter what one's approach is or one's desire is. The main thing is to actually connect to Krishna. And in this day and age, the primary methodology of connecting to Krishna is through the chanting of his names. And I think you're all familiar with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that's it, to connect through his names with devotion. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that is Lord Chaitanya, in his very concise prayers called the Shikshashika prayers, really tells us how to do this. So my advice to everybody is to study these prayers. Of course, these prayers begin with general glorification of the holy name and what the holy name does, like Cheto Darpanam Arjanam, Bhava Mahadvagni Nirvapanam. It cleanses the heart, and it helps one have a taste for the ecstasy that one is always hankering for, and it helps one attain victory in all sorts of aspects of life. And then the Shikshashika prayers continue with more in-depth understanding of the holy name, finally cultivating with what we call Atmanivedanam. Atmanivedanam means complete self-surrender, or giving oneself, or loving Krishna so completely that one is immersed in the ecstasy of love of Krishna and completely, let's say, callous to everything else. And of course, that's the same as we have in the yoga system of samadhi. Samadhi is complete absorption. So we find that complete absorption occurs to the highest degree when there is love. That's why we call it bhakti yoga. I mean, for example, when you have a young boy or young girl or people in love with each other, they become so completely absorbed in each other that they ignore the practical aspects of reality. I'm not advocating that, of course. That's just something that occurs as a natural dynamic in the interactions between people in loving exchanges. They would just as soon run into a stop sign while driving their cars as anything else, because they're not aware that the external world exists. So this is a type of samadhi or absorption that occurs due to love in this material world. What to speak of the intense love that one can experience in the spiritual realm, which is actually much more intense than anything that we can experience in the material world. And the symptoms of this intense love are described by one of our great teachers, acharyas, named Srila Rupa Goswami. He has one literature, actually two literatures that describe it. One is the Nectar of Devotion, or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Another one is the Ujjala Nilamani, which is the more advanced study. And in these literatures, he describes some of the symptoms of advanced love and devotion and absorption. And he goes into elaborate descriptions of these symptoms, not only of the symptoms, but actually of those things that stimulate the symptoms, and then how to identify the symptoms. I'm not going to get into that right now, because I would request everyone to study at least the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion. And so that's really what's in store for us if we progress on the path of bhakti. Unlimited ecstasy, Kevalananda Kanda, only happiness, only ecstasy. So much ecstasy that one will be completely unaware of all the problems that are there in this world. Just like you find in the process of yoga, yam, niyam, asana, pratyahama, pratyahara, dharana, and samadhi, that there is a complete absorption or a withdrawal. Before you get to the complete absorption, there's a complete withdrawal of the senses with their sense objects with the external world. And that's most efficiently accomplished through the process of bhakti yoga. And that process is essentially chanting the Lord's holy names and, a few other things like offering your food to Krishna before you eat it, to Krishna and Radharani before you eat it, having good sadhana. Of course, as yogis, I'm sure you all have good sadhana. I myself wake up at 3 o'clock every morning. Of course, I can't get everybody else up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Gopinath, do you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning? No. Anyway, we have some, not Gopinath, I'm not going to make fun of Gopinath, I promise you I won't do that. But we have some devotees here that I have to wake up in the morning. And anyway, And so then we have our first kirtans at 4:30 in the morning, and then we have a chanting and reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the process of sadhana. And when you have this early morning sadhana, it really cements the consciousness or Krishna consciousness for the rest of the day. So as I said, it's based on absorption in the holy name, study Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shikshastika prayers, and then also we have some what we call offenses to be avoided in chanting Hare Krishna. There's actually 10 of them that are listed, which my spiritual master, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, would always speak about during initiation. But I'm going to present these offenses in a positive way rather than a negative way, which is something different than what most people do. Of course, the first offense in a negative way is to, one should avoid blaspheming the devotees of the Lord who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. But to put that in a positive way is one should serve spiritualists, one should serve devotees. Not only should one serve devotees, but one should consider oneself a servant of everybody. That is, to bring everybody, or try to bring everyone according to their particular ability, to the spiritual platform. That is one of the main duties of a spiritualist, is to actually amanina manadena, not consider or want any respect, but to be ready to give respects to others. So that's the positive way of expressing that first offense on chanting. The second offense on chanting is something that I don't think any of you have any problem with. Considering the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Vishnu to be, Lord Shiva or Ganesh to be superior to, or equal to the name of Lord Vishnu. I don't think that's even something I have to talk about because I don't see anybody from an Indian background here, so that's not a problem. Right? Anyway, I worship Hanuman. Some of you may have heard of Hanuman, but I don't worship him as God. I worship Lord Shiva as a servant of Krishna, and I worship Hanuman as a servant of Ram. So that's all right. If you like demigods like Gopinath does, then you can actually I promised I wouldn't tease you. So if you like demigods, then then you can actually worship them as servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's a positive way. And the third offense is to disobey the order of the spiritual master. So one should not follow blindly the order of the spiritual master. One should have a reciprocal relationship with one's guru. And I understand that all of you have nice Siksha gurus here, either Jayananda or Gokul Chandra, and just interact with them in a loving way and understand their intention. And you're all welcome to write to me at any time to get some instruction or guidance in Krishna consciousness. And the next offense is to blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures in pursuance of the Vedic version. But the positive side is we should appreciate all literatures that propagate yoga. Yoga means to connect. I see Jayananda smiling. He liked that one. Anyway, so yoga yoga means to connect. And we talk about reconnection. So right now we are disconnected. So the whole process of yoga is to connect to Ishvara, as Patanjali says. So anyway, we should understand any literature that helps us connect, even if it's somewhat of a lower step than a higher step, that literature should be appreciated. Okay. Next offense is to think the glories of the holy name are imagination. The positive way of saying that is that Krishna is there in his holy name. Spiritual sound vibration is non-different from the object to which it refers. So, Namachintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. When you say Krishna, Krishna is dancing on the tip of your tongue. Krishna is present before you. One of the things that encouraged me, I did practice yoga before I came to Krishna consciousness. So I was a yogi. I used to meditate for hours and hours and hours, longer than any of you have ever meditated for. I was better than Jayananda. And I would sit in the forest for like 5 hours at a stretch chanting Om. True, it's a true story. And what happened when I chanted Om for 5 hours? The animals would come around me. I'd be surrounded by all these little animals. Not tigers, not lions, not bears, not elephants, but, you know, little chipmunks and raccoons. I think you have them in Finland, right? Chipmunks, raccoons, whatever. And squirrels. And they would surround me and they'd be like this close with me. And they would be listening to Om. So that was my yoga experience. And it was an amazing yoga experience. And finally I started chanting Hare Krishna when I heard Prabhupada chanting on the radio. And that increased or intensified my yoga experience. So my experience was that the Om, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu Sabdake Parasham Nrishu, the Om is actually non-different than Hare Krishna. Of course, we chant Hare Krishna because that is what is prescribed. But Om, if you analyze the word Om, it actually means Radha and Krishna and the living entity connected with each other. So that's yoga or connection. Om is a word of connection. Krishna is a word of connection too. Of course, the word Krishna means the most attractive. Krishna, Krish means to attract. Na means ananda or bliss. So you put them both together. Krishna attracts you so you can experience ananda or bliss. So, and then the next offense to be avoided is to give some crazy interpretation about the holy name. But, you know, I already gave you a good interpretation. Krishna means most attractive. So you don't have to give a crazy interpretation. Next offense is to think that or to do something crazy or what we call counterproductive. I'm not going to use the word sinful because that's a politically incorrect term. So not to do something that's counterproductive to spiritual life and think that chanting is going to actually make up for it. What do I mean by counterproductive? Smoking marijuana is counterproductive because it puts you into an illusion within an illusion. Plus, it gives you bad karma. Eating meat puts you into the mode of ignorance and gives you bad karma, right? So we don't like bad karma. We like Krishna karma. Anyway, we like spiritual energy, Krishna Shakti, rather than karma. Karma we don't like at all. I mean, at least in terms of reaction. So one shouldn't think that they could just chant and smoke between each mantra. Doesn't work like that. It won't be effective. And then the next offense is to consider it chanting just like a ritual. I mean, we have things that we do that are ritualistic. I mean, for example, you see me wearing a particular outfit. This is a ritual. It's a dhoti. It's not essential. It's a detail. It's not a principle in Krishna consciousness. But the principle is chanting the Lord's holy names, chanting Krishna's holy names, and being absorbed in samadhi in Krishna's holy names. So that's the principle. And the details may change. You know, the hairstyle can change. The tilak, sometimes we find people with big tilak or small tilak or, you know, whatever. These are all different details. We're interested in the basic principles of Krishna consciousness. Anyway, and then, so it's not a ritual. The chanting of Hare Krishna is not a ritual. There are many rituals that are prescribed in the Vedas that are rituals, may be necessary in certain cultural contexts. You know, rituals differ. For example, one of the rituals we have in the Western world, we used to have, is when we meet someone, we shake hands, right? That's a ritual. But now, because of COVID, I hope you don't shake hands with people anymore. Do you? No? Yes? No, you don't. Now you go like this. Hopefully you do that. Hopefully you're not in denial of COVID. It's real. I'm not going to get into vaccinations right now. Don't worry. You know, it's a real thing. Anyway, so Then another point that's made is one should be careful who they explain Krishna consciousness to, or let's say in a positive way, one should explain Bhakti Yoga to people according to their own ability to understand Bhakti Yoga. We do not preach Krishna consciousness, we share Krishna consciousness. In English, the word preach has a very heavy connotation meaning to it. It means that, we just like corner someone in a room and start yelling at them until they surrender. So we don't do that. Oh, we shouldn't do that. Don't do that, Gopinath. So what we do is we share according to someone's culture. That's all. Like in China, we have many devotees in China, and we share things according to their culture. When they eat prasadam, they eat with their chopsticks. We don't insist that they have to eat with their hands or with a spoon or with whatever is the cultural dynamic that we're accustomed to. So that's really important, not to present things that violate people's cultural understandings. And then finally, one should be trying to avoid these offenses. Let's say the negative would be to not have complete faith in the holy names and to maintain material attachments. So the positive explanation is to be attempting to eradicate or to cleanse ourselves of impediments on the path of bhakti as we're chanting. And what are those impediments? These are called anarthas in Sanskrit. Lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy. I mean, really, these are all some things that we don't want. I mean, I don't want to be envious. I don't want to be lusty. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to be an illusion. I want to be happy. I want to be connected to Krishna. So these are all things that get in the way, that you got to really cleanse from the heart. Cheto darpana marjanam. And ultimately, the most important thing is to be attentive while you're chanting, to be able to focus the mind and stop, as Patanjali says, stop the turning of the senses, the vritti. That word vritti is very interesting because in English you also have the same word, invert, subvert, revert, pervert, all these, sorry about that word. You have all these other words. I know that's a bad word. Pervert, convert. That's interesting, convert. So you have this vritti is used in Sanskrit, which means the mind is always churning, or as Arjuna says in the Gita in the 6th chapter, Chanchalahi manaha Krishna pramati balavadridam tashaham nigraham manye vayor iva shadushkaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, and obstinate, and it is harder to control than the wind, right? So one has to work at it to control the mind. And how do you control the mind? Well, there's the chanting, that's true. But you have to have some, what we call in Sanskrit, some sankalpa. That means some goal that you fix on. That's one thing. And then you have to cultivate the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness, there are 3 modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the mode of goodness makes you peaceful. And so the mode of goodness means eating food in the mode of goodness, listening to music in the mode of goodness, being with people in the mode of goodness, people interested in yoga, in Krishna consciousness. And this helps one become peaceful enough so one can control the mind. Not eating too much, or not even eating too little. Because if you eat too little, your mind is going to get pretty wild too. Don't be too austere. Sometimes we find aspiring spiritualists, devotees, who embark on doing too many austerities and too many fasts, and they sleep on a bed of nails or something, like Gopinath does. They sleep on a bed of nails and think in this way they're going to be Krishna conscious. Or that, I remember years ago, Gopinath would wear wooden shoes, And he was thinking, this is going to make me Krishna conscious. It didn't work. So anyway, it doesn't work like that. It's cultivation of the mode of goodness and actually having a sankalpa. What is your intention? What is your reason? Why are you doing what you're doing? We should always remember why we're doing what we're doing, and that helps us focus. And Krishna, in the Gita, the second chapter, he talks about this. He says, Vyavasayatmaka buddhir ekeha kuranandana. That those who are on this path, their focus is one. And those who are deviate from the path, bahushaktas tvanantascha, they have many different places. Their mind is all over the place. So the whole point is to really control the mind and focus it on one's goal. And that's yoga or connection with Krishna. And that's Bhakti Yoga in a nutshell. So, that's my lecture. And so, what we're going to do now is traditionally, when devotees take initiation, they promise to follow 4 regulative principles, which I think everybody knows about. No meat, fish, or eggs, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And there's reasons for those things. If one doesn't follow them, one will be in the mode of ignorance or the mode of passion. Mind will not be controlled. There'll be karma, which will impede one from Krishna consciousness. In fact, there's this statement in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam that if someone is killing animals, they will never be able to understand spiritual life. What is that verse? Nivritti tarshar upagiyamanas pavokshadat shatra mano viramat kautama shloka gunanavadat punan virajeta vina pashugnat. That if one is killing animals, they cannot really appreciate yoga or spiritual life. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, these 4 regulative principles, so we will promise to follow these 4 regulative principles and chant minimum of 16 rounds on the japa beads and assist your spiritual teachers in presenting Krishna consciousness to others. Because if we have something so valuable, and of course we are all connected with His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who is my spiritual master, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, without whom none of us would understand Krishna consciousness or be in Krishna consciousness or be connected to Krishna Yoga. So this is important to connect with Prabhupada through this disciplic succession, through your Diksha and Shiksha gurus, and in this way try to share this knowledge with others. Because if you have some knowledge where you can really help and save someone, then if you don't share it, that's a very miserly type of existence, right? If one just has this knowledge, I so oftentimes use the example that if you see someone who is fixing the roof of their house and they're getting ready to fall off by accident, and you don't yell out, "You're going to fall off," if you just think that's their karma, then you're also blamable or culpable for that particular activity. So that's important. So now we'll proceed with the name giving. Is that all right?